Oh, six?
And it is a Jenny, a JN4, which saw an awful lot of service here at Pearson Airport.
Oh, really?
So it was, I think, a good idea, but it's going to be a bare bones aircraft, no skin on the aircraft at all.
You'd be able to see all the makings
Sure,
working.
you can see, and it's got a lot of detail in it, so it'll be interesting for a lot of builders, a lot of historians to see that.
Sure, yeah. What kind of wood are you using? Or is it wood at all?
This is, I got several different kinds, but this is a pine, I believe it is, and then there's some mahogany used, and there's a couple other woods used on it.
I mean, you're not using sitka spruce?
You ought to see the size of some of these little, there's some little screws I've got to use.
Oh my God. Jeez.
But those will be trailing gear as far as the landing gear is concerned.
And what kind of power will you have on it?
Well, it won't be powered.
It won't be powered.
No, it'll just be a static model. Now we have a powered Jenny in back that a fellow donated. It's radio controlled.
Really?
And he didn't have any place for it, so we asked if we wanted to have it. Coincidentally, it'd make a nice pair with this particular aircraft.
Sure, yeah. Do you look at it just to see?
Well, not really. The construction of that is much different than this.
Okay.
This actually could be used to build a full-scale aircraft. It's that detailed.
And would these plans include an engine if you wanted to someday? Or?
Well, I suppose so, but I don't believe it would really hold up to that because an awful lot of these joints are going to be glued. And in a flying model, you'd want additional strength, so you might want to pin those also.
Okay. Wow.
In order to give it additional strength. But I don't fly those aircraft, so I'm not very aware of what they do.
Sure.
But it's interesting, once you have all these integral parts together, it gives it tremendous strength.
I bet.
And then if you were to lay a skin over it, which this won't have, then of course that adds more strength to it.
And what would the skin be made out of?
Well, the skin is made out of a fabric. In the flying aircraft, such as those are made out of even plastic sheeting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but this particular aircraft, if it were, as you see by the wings over here, those wings, they have, and World War I aircraft were covered in a fabric.
Okay.
The wood itself was the Sitka spruce hired by, well, first loggers, and then the military took over. And they'd go out and cut the Sitka spruce, make the small parts, did some assembly here and most of it overseas. But
and would the fabric be covered with some kind of a bonding agent or something?
Yes, yeah, it was lacquered.
Lacquered?
So it'd give it a little more stiffness. Even so, as I went up in one biplane and you get up there, and the Jenny was famous for that. You get up there and you hear the fabric going plop, 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 as you flew. So it gave a little more thrill to it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So they're quite an interesting aircraft, easy to fly. They taught an awful lot of World War I airmen how to fly, World War II, and they overproduced. A lot of them went into the aerial circuses and that type of thing after the war.
You know, I saw that movie, Spirit of St. Louis. Didn't Lindbergh have a Jenny in the beginning of that movie? He talked about his Jenny. He talked about his Jenny, and he was flying it around. That's pretty cool.
Two good movies that encompass a lot of the history here. The history is elsewhere, but the B-17 would be the movie Memphis Belle.
Memphis Belle,
which is a really good movie, and then the biplanes in World War I, the movie Flyboys, is another good one.
Cool. I'll look for those.
Yeah, and it illustrates the fact over here that early on, the pilots were sent up in these airplanes, and the pilots were very young, sometimes as young as 16.
Wow.
Lifespan was about 2 to 3 weeks of aerial combat. But they didn't have parachutes. They had parachutes for their balloon observers. Geez, I couldn't get that out. But they're observers. But they didn't want parachutes on the pilots because the airplanes themselves were too expensive, too hard to come by.
Wasn't in the land.
So I guess the people were more expendable.
Wow.
But in Flyboy, as it pointed out, when the early pilots of the biplanes and that in war, they had three choices when they were shot down. One was go down in flames. The other was to jump out of the aircraft and fall to your death. And all of them carried pistols, and the last one, they could shoot themselves if they wanted to.
Good options. What was the third one?
The third one, bang.
Oh, the third one was shoot
yourself, yeah.
Wow.
And the balloons, however, those observers, they had parachutes. And then later on, they finally realized that they needed to put parachutes on the pilots, which was a godsend, of course, to those pilots.
Sure, yeah.
They met horrible deaths for the most part. The attrition rate was very, very high.
Well, yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
And I guess the opposite is true today, right? The planes are more expendable than the pilots, right?
You know, and that's true, but I think that before very long, we're going to see robotic aircraft.
Sure.
Pilots won't enter into it. They'll be sitting at a screen someplace in Kansas and fighting in Iraq or something.
Imagine that.
You know.
Wow.
So it's kind of incomprehensible, but it will happen because of the drones that they're flying right now.
Yeah, right.
But aviation, once it started with the Wright brothers, and no pun intended, but it just took off.
Took off, yeah.
And such as these aircraft over here, such as that interrupter gear on the wall of the shooting down aircraft. You know, first they were shooting their propellers off. And then they put metal pieces on their propellers so they wouldn't shoot them off. Then eventually they figured out how to synchronize the machine gun to the motor so the bullets would pass through the propeller.
That's hard
and
to
the French
imagine.
did that.
Did they first?
French did that, and one of their planes crashed, and the Germans found it, and then they developed a better interrupter gear. And they flew a plane similar to that Blaireau up there on the wall, and they called it the Eindecker. It was a single low wing, and the machine gun was mounted just ahead of the pilot.
Okay.
And it was one of the planes responsible for Bloody April, where they just about totally decimated the Allied Air Force over there in World War I. So it was very important that they upgrade their... When they first started out, my highest airplane up there that's positioned highest, that was an observation aircraft. The model's down below. And the only way they had to defend themselves, they'd take up bricks and rocks and throw at each other. You know, here's a rock, okay, here's a brick, you know, and they'd throw at them. But eventually they started taking their rifles and their sidearms.
And that's a push plane.
Most of the airplanes were push planes, as you can see indicative over here on the wall, because they wanted aircraft balance, of course. So they put the motor behind the pilot. The pilot could see better up front, and it made better balance in the airplanes. Besides, if they wanted to shoot through the propeller later, they wanted it behind them until that other interrupter gear was developed. They kind of accepted that fact.
And you said there is a model of the interrupter gear here?
No. Not of the gear.
Okay.
No. This aircraft was called the Blaireau, and it was the first aircraft to fly across the English Channel. And that was about 24 miles, I think, across the English Channel at the point they flew. And that was quite an accomplishment in its day. But the Germans used that design to develop the Eindecker. It was a kind of a clumsy aircraft, but they were able to shoot down a lot of aircraft.
Eindecker's like one deck, or?
Yeah, Eindecker meant single low wing.
Single low wing.
Yeah. So yeah, air industry and aircraft and the progression of it is pretty fascinating. Here in Vancouver, that wood plant you see back there, that was done in the Northwest because the Sitka spruce is unique to the Northwest. And it was strong, it was durable, it was lightweight, and their goal was 1 million board feet of lumber a day, which is equivalent to this hangar about in a day.
That's a lot of wood.
That's a lot of wood.
And I read over there that 70% of it went overseas.
Yes.
Wow.
Well, you consider building this type of fragile aircraft. We didn't have the capabilities, number one. And secondly, you build a fragile aircraft like that, put it on a ship. By the time it got over there, it's probably destroyed. So the Lafayette Escadrille, when the U.S. went into the fight, most of the pilots were volunteer pilots, and they flew French aircraft. And then later on, they flew French and British and some Italian. Then eventually, we had some aircraft showing up over there in mid-1918. So it's pretty late, because the war was over by 1918.
I see. So we learned a lot from them.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's, that was a miserable war. They all are, but that was pretty miserable. But the air field here, it was the largest airfield west of the Mississippi for many, many, many years. It was not much more than a cow field, but still it was the largest airfield. And a lot of the aircraft to my right over on the wall over there, including Rickenbacker, he flew into this field and out.
Oh, he did? This field here?
Oh, yeah. We had a lot of very famous fighters in and out of Pearson.
Imagine that. What a scene that would be.
Oh.
Jeez.
Well, you can see by those photos over there that the public turned out in droves. It was something unique.
Yeah.
And it was historical, very historical.
Wow.
And to have it here in the Northwest even made it more cherished, I think.
It'd be nice if there were films that survived of those landings and those people coming in. I guess film wasn't too advanced back then.
Well, no, but they did. They did something like my brother did as an acrobat. They took a plane up and they put a dummy in the rear cockpit with another guy. When they got up in the air, because they did stunt piloting in these old aircraft, when they got up in the air, they threw the dummy out and nearly had a heart attack in everybody in the crowd.
Wow.
You know, because they kind of pushed their buttons there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, when we first drove up and we parked, we saw two military jets taking off. They looked like F-14s, but there were swept-back wings, two wingtips in the back, or tails.
That's from Portland.
Portland.
Yeah, they don't maintain a full military base over there, but they do have in and outs.
Okay.
It's called in and outs.
Okay. Now, are those 14s or 15s?
Well, the last one I saw was a 14.
That's what I thought these were, the swept-back wings.
Yeah.
And the gentleman up front said there were F-15 Eagles, but I never knew that they have swept-back wings, though.
Well, there have been some over here.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
There's a variety of aircraft that came in there in Portland. Once they had they even had the Deltas over there at one time, years and years ago. Okay. That's when they had a full-time guard base over there. And one of those, unfortunately, took off and it crashed into the heights up here, not far from a friend's house, up there on the heights. But thankfully, the pilot ejected and he didn't hit anybody.
We went to that fighter Top Gun school
in Fallon.
In Fallon, right? Yeah. And the person who was taking us around told us that he had to eject from an F-14.
Oh, yeah.
And he said it's quite an experience how those rockets out of your seat shoot you out of that plane.
Yeah.
So he was grounded for a while, and he was on tour duty. He was giving us tours. Yeah.
Well, they get so beat up on that. Their body takes tremendous pressure when those rockets hit in.
Yeah.
And a lot of them just come back just from the ejection itself. They'll come back black and blue and just beat up and miss her. It's better than crashing, of course.
Sure,
but, they take a beating.
He looked fine. They're all humble, all those pilots, right? It's nothing, and just move on to the next assignment.
Sure.
But he was quite an individual.
Yeah, it's interesting. Me, I don't know why I never. Well, I know why I didn't fly, because I had a young family and I was raising him.
Sure.
But I wanted to fly in the worst way. I went up in a 1926 Travel Air here one time, biplane.
Oh wow.
And we flew down. I don't know. Are you from this area?
No.
San Francisco.
Well, there's the Alcoa aluminum plant that was downriver from us here.
Oh, really?
And it produced a lot of the aluminum for the different war efforts, but now it's closed. But we went down and we jumped over fence posts about this high. We were going like this, jumping over, and then we flew over the St. John's Bridge in Portland and over the hills, Portland Hills over there, flew over Portland a little bit, went up the gorge, and came back and landed here.
It must have been an amazing trip.
Oh, it was wonderful.
How loud was it going? I mean,
It was pretty loud.
Pretty loud.
You're out there in the open, so to speak, and the old leather helmet was flapping on my ears, and everything. But when I landed, I think my wife almost had to put a rope on me and haul me out of that aircraft. I fell in love with
Oh,
that
did you
aircraft.
really? It was in your blood.
If I had the money and had the area, I would buy a Stearman, and I'd take that puppy and put it in the garage and not just go out there and pet it.
I've heard Stearman, tremendous plane, tough, dependable.
Well, they in themselves were very prominent in pilots learning how to fly.
There was a Bearcat plane too?
Bearcat later on.
Yeah, that's supposed to be a tough, dependable plane too.
Very, very tough. Yeah, very tough. Yeah.
Well, it's just a dream of mine, always will be, but flying is really a wonderful thing.
Are you going to say attempt to fly?
No, I've always started out, but I never
He's
finished.
jumped.
Have you went up?
I've gone up.
In private planes?
In private planes, yeah, right.
Open cockpit?
No open cockpit, so it's a
That's
big
an
difference.
experience.
I'm not going to do that, yeah.
That's an experience because much slower speed. It's kind of the nitty gritty of flying, I think.
Sure.
Because you envision this, you hear the wings flapping, you hear the motor doing this and that, and you get the smell of it.
Sure, yeah,
It's
right.
really a hard thing to pass by.
Well, I'm going to do that. It's on my list. That bucket
Be sure and
list,
do
right?
that.
We're near the San Carlos Airport in California.
I'm sorry?
Near the San Carlos Airport. That's
Uh-huh.
where we live.
Yeah.
So
So now that's
in California,
California, northern, southern?
near Half Moon Bay.
Near Central.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in the Navy down there, spent a lot of time in San Diego, and
Oh.
shipping in and out there. So,
Oh, yeah.
I think I was by Half Moon Bay, and
Sure, yeah.
I was going to go out and jump in the ocean and swim.
Hi, we're just wandering around. Go, keep
Oh,
talking.
but someone yelled shark, so I stayed out of the water.
We still have those.
We still have
Yes.
those.
I think that was at Mission Beach. I don't know.
They're near San Diego. We're not that familiar with San Diego,
Yeah.
but we have sharks all up and down the coast.
Oh yeah.
There are great
I-
whites too.